Nobody in Cleveland's front office expected joint practice day number 11 to turn into the Shedeur-Sanders show. It was supposed to be a tune-up, a chance for the Browns to get live reps against a different look, iron out some wrinkles, and let the veterans handle the heavy lifting. But in walked Shedeur, a fifth-round rookie. Carrying himself like the whole afternoon was his personal audition tape for the starting job. If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. And here's the thing. He didn't just make a good impression. He turned the Browns quarterback conversation on its head. The setup couldn't have been more in his favor, or more against him, depending on how you looked at it. He hadn't taken more than a handful of first-team reps all camp. Deshaun Watson was still the presumptive starter. And the Panthers' defense, even in practice, is known for playing with that chip-on-the-shoulder intensity that makes quarterbacks sweat. Add in the fact that this was a public session with media swarming the sidelines, and the stage was set for Sanders to either crash or shine. He chose to shine. From the very first snap, it was clear Sanders wasn't overwhelmed by the moment. His cadence was sharp. His eyes never left downfield, even when the pass rush was collapsing. And the ball? It came out like it was on a rope, tight spirals, perfect placement, making it look like the receivers barely had a break stride. Every completion felt like a little message to the Browns' coaching staff. Stop thinking about the future. Start thinking about now. One of the moments that had the crowd buzzing came early in the session, on a third-and-long drill. The Panthers disguised a blitz, crowding the line with 6 defenders before bailing into a mixed zone. A rookie mistake would have been to panic, check it down, or force the throw. Sanders didn't bite. He shifted protection with a quick hand signal, took the snap, and rifled a 22-yard dart to Amari Cooper on a deep dig route, splitting 2 defenders who thought they had the passing lane sealed. That play did more than move the chains in a practice setting. It moved the needle in the locker room. Cooper walked back to the huddle grinning, and you could see the subtle body language shift from the veterans. This wasn't just a rookie filling in for a few snaps. This was a guy who could run the offense like it belonged to him. And then there was the Jimmy Horn Jr. factor. Before the practice even kicked off, Sanders shared a moment with his former college teammate. Cameras caught them laughing, chest bumping, and running through a quick hand sign route combination they used back in their college days. It looked like fun, but it was more than that. It was chemistry. And that chemistry paid off during the live reps. Twice, Sanders found Horn on quick, timing-based routes that sliced through Carolina's coverage before they even had a chance to react. It was clear they hadn't missed a beat since college, and that comfort gave Sanders a security blanket to operate at full confidence. Even Panthers players couldn't ignore it. One veteran defensive back was overheard telling a teammate, "Man, I wish we had that kid in our room." That's not the kind of compliment rookies usually get from opponents after one day. By the end of practice, the Browns coaching staff wasn't just impressed. They were curious. Kevin Stefanski, who's notoriously careful about rookie hype, walked over to Sanders after the final whistle and spent a solid 2 minutes in his ear. Reporters couldn't hear the exchange, but they didn't need to. Hours later, Stefanski announced that Sanders would start the upcoming preseason game against the Panthers. That's right. After one real session with the first team, Sanders had earned himself a starting nod. The locker room reaction said it all. Teammates congratulated him like he'd just been named captain. Veterans who had been keeping a polite distance started treating him like part of the inner circle. Amari Cooper told reporters that Sanders was lighthearted but locked in, adding, "He takes this seriously, but he doesn't let the moment own him. He owns a moment." Coming from one of the most respected voices on the roster, that's not small praise. It wasn't just leadership and poise that stood out. It was Sanders' ability to adapt on the fly. Throughout practice, the Panthers kept throwing different looks at him. Zone blitzes, man press, simulated pressures. He didn't flinch. He adjusted protections, hit his hot reads, and when nothing was there, he had the awareness to throw the ball away rather than force a mistake. That composure under pressure isn't normal for a rookie. Most guys in their first NFL camp are still thinking about footwork, timing, and just remembering the play call. Sanders was already in the chess match phase, anticipating what the defense was trying to bait him into and refusing to take the cheese. The buzz heading into the preseason opener was unlike anything Cleveland had seen for a rookie quarterback in years. And when game day arrived, Sanders walked into the stadium with that same calm intensity he'd shown in practice. No wide-eyed nerves, no over-the-top bravado, just quiet confidence. From his first series, he looked like he belonged. He commanded the huddle, kept the tempo high, and made throws that seasoned pros would be proud of. One of the standout plays came in the second quarter, when he rolled out to his left to evade pressure and launched a pinpoint strike 30 yards downfield while throwing across his body. The crowd erupted, and the sideline knew this wasn't a fluke. This was a quarterback who could execute under NFL-level chaos. It's worth noting that Sanders didn't pad his stats with safe checkdowns or low-risk completions. He attacked downfield. He trusted his arm, his reads, and his receivers. And perhaps most impressively, he did it without looking reckless. Every aggressive throw had purpose. Every decision had calculation behind it. By the time the game ended, the Browns sideline wasn't just celebrating a preseason win. They were celebrating the arrival of a player who could change the team's trajectory. And the whispers that started during that joint practice, they were now full-blown conversations in the coaches' offices. Because here's the truth, talent like that is hard to keep on the bench, especially when it wins over a locker room this quickly. In the NFL, opportunities like Sanders' joint practice with the Panthers don't come often for late-round rookies. Usually, those reps go to the established starter or the high-profile backup. But when you get that shot, you have to grab it with both hands. And Sanders didn't just grab it, he slammed the door shut behind him. Now, the Browns face a new reality. They have a rookie quarterback who's proven he can run the offense, lead the team, and handle pressure. They also have a high-priced veteran in Deshaun Watson, whose job on paper was never in question. But paper doesn't win games. Performance does. And as every day passes, it's getting harder to ignore the performance Sanders is putting on. The most telling sign? Veterans are adjusting their schedules to work with him after practice. Offensive linemen are asking for his input on protection calls. Receivers are requesting more reps with him in one-on-ones. That doesn't happen unless they believe they'll be catching passes from him when it matters most. What happened after that Panthers joint practice and preseason start was a kind of snowball effect you only see in sports when talent, timing, and opportunity collide. It was no longer just about Shedeur Sanders getting noticed. It was about him forcing the Browns into a conversation they weren't ready to have yet. Because once the tape from that Panther performance hit the film room, it spread like wildfire. Coaches watched it and saw something they couldn't ignore. It wasn't just a rookie making some nice throws. It was a rookie controlling an NFL offense like he'd been doing it for 5 years. He wasn't just hitting open guys. He was throwing them open. That's veteran-level stuff. The first ripple effect came in the quarterback room. What had once been a clear hierarchy, Watson at the top, Sanders buried in the depth chart, started to feel a little awkward. Nobody said out loud, but you could feel it in the air during meetings. When the coaches broke down tape and pointed to good decision-making or perfect execution, more and more of those clips featured number 14 instead of number 4. That's the kind of thing that plants seeds in players' heads, especially when they're the ones catching those passes. Receivers started adjusting their timing to match Sanders' style. Tight ends were telling him between plays what looks they liked against certain coverages. Even the running backs were noticing how he'd manipulate linebackers with his eyes before dumping off a pass. These weren't rookie-level relationships forming. They were quarterback-to-veteran trust bonds building at warp speed. Meanwhile, on the defensive side, guys like Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward were quietly impressed. They'd throw disguised coverages and delayed blitzes at him in practice, expecting to catch him slipping, but he'd stand in, take the hit if necessary, and deliver the ball on time. For a defense that had been frustrating opposing QBs all camp, that kind of poise was a statement. It's one thing to make a flashy play when everything's clean. It's another to stay surgical when you've got an all-pro edge rusher breathing down your neck. The media storm built just as quickly. Local sports radio couldn't go a segment without a caller demanding to know why Sanders wasn't getting more reps. Beat writers started asking Kevin Stefanski the same question in press conferences, framing it as evaluating all options, but clearly trying to poke the bear. National shows picked it up too. Clips of his joint practice throws and preseason highlights ran on loop, with analysts debating if the Browns had accidentally stumbled onto their quarterback of the future. It wasn't just hype, it was the way Sanders carried himself through all of it. The guy never took the bait. When reporters asked about his growing buzz, he'd just smile and say, "I'm just doing my job." No grand declarations, no subtle digs at Watson, no cocky soundbites for headlines. That restraint only made him more appealing to veterans who'd seen other rookies crash and burn under the weight of early attention. In the following practices, Stefanski started slipping Sanders into more first-team periods. Not enough to make it official, but enough to see how he'd look with the starters against a real defense. Every time, he looked comfortable, better than comfortable. He looked like the offense belonged to him. That's when Jimmy Haslam started showing up to more sessions. And let's be honest, owners don't just casually wander down to practice without a reason. The word was out. The rookie wasn't just holding his own, he was thriving. And in the NFL, thriving rookies don't stay backups for long. Of course, the Browns had a problem. They'd invested heavily, financially and politically, in Watson. Benching him wasn't as simple as swapping jerseys. It meant admitting the guy they paid $230 million to wasn't the clear-cut best option anymore. It meant explaining to the fan base why the most expensive quarterback in the league was watching from the sideline while a fifth-round pick took his place. That's not a conversation any front office wants to have. But inside the locker room, players were starting to think less about contracts and more about wins. And Sanders had the juice. You could see it in how the huddle responded to him. You could feel it in the sideline energy when he made a big throw. Football teams know when a quarterback gives them a better shot. It's instinct. The Panthers game had also done something important. It proved Sanders could translate his practice performance to a live setting. That's the leap a lot of rookies never make. You can be a camp standout, but if you shrink under the lights, it all disappears. Sanders didn't just handle the lights. He lit them up. Then came the second preseason game. Stefanski, still publicly committed to Watson as QB1, nevertheless gave Sanders more first-half snaps than anyone expected. And again, the rookie delivered methodical drives, red zone execution, no panic under pressure. His decision-making looked like it had been sharpened by years of reps, not a few weeks of first-team exposure. After that, even the quiet skeptics in the building started to turn. Coaches began privately running what-if scenarios. What if they gave Sanders a package of plays during the regular season? What if they worked him into certain matchups? What if Watson's performance dipped and they had to make a change mid-year? The fact those conversations were happening at all meant the door was already cracked open. The chemistry with Jimmy Horn Jr. continued to be a weapon, too. That connection wasn't just nostalgia. It was production. Horn knew exactly how to adjust his routes to Sanders' ball placement, and Sanders trusted him in tight coverage situations. The two were turning heads so consistently that other receivers started mirroring Horn's approach, figuring that if it worked for him, it might earn them a few extra targets too. Amari Cooper's influence also can't be overstated. As the alpha in the receiving room, his early public praise of Sanders carried weight. When the top wideout buys in, everyone else tends to follow. Cooper wasn't just saying nice things for the cameras. He was staying late with Sanders, walking him through route nuances, and testing his recall of coverage tendencies. The mutual respect was obvious. By the time the Browns wrapped preseason, Sanders wasn't just a promising rookie anymore. He was a quarterback who had completely shifted the team's internal expectations. The debate wasn't whether he'd start someday. It was when. And that's when things got interesting. The Browns opened a regular season with Watson as expected, but fans were watching every snap with a side eye toward the sideline. Every stalled drive brought murmurs. Every misread or overthrow had social media asking if it was Shedeur time. That kind of pressure isn't easy for a starter to live under, and it wasn't going away. When Sanders eventually got his chance in the regular season, whether due to performance, injury, or situational substitution, it wasn't going to be a test run. It was going to be an audition for the future. And based on everything from that Panthers joint practice forward, the kid looked ready to pass with flying colors. The Browns' regular season started with Deshaun Watson under center, as everyone expected. On paper, The decision made sense. Watson was a high-priced veteran, the man the front office had built the offense around. But football isn't played on paper, and within the first few games, the gap between the quarterback the Browns thought they had and the one Shedeur Sanders might be was impossible to ignore. In Week 3, it all came to a head. Cleveland was down by 14 points late in the third quarter against a divisional rival. The offense was stagnant. 3 and outs, missed connections, a crowd that had started to turn restless. Then, on a play where Watson scrambled to escape pressure, he took a hit and stayed down a little too long. The trainers came out, the crowd murmured, and suddenly there was movement on the sideline. Sanders started warming up. The moment he stepped onto the field, you could feel the energy shift. Browns fans, who had been slouched in their seats just minutes earlier, were on their feet. The defense was watching from the sideline. Every camera in the stadium turned toward the rookie, and with his first snap, he did exactly what you'd expect from someone who'd been waiting his whole life for this. He took command. First play, a quick slant on Mari Cooper for 11 yards and a first down. Second play, a play-action rollout, firing a dart to David Njoku for another first. The rhythm was instant, the timing was perfect, and the body language of the entire fence changed. They moved faster, they hit their routes harder, they believed. Then came the drive that lit Cleveland on fire. Down 2 touchdowns. Sanders orchestrated a 78-yard march downfield in just under 4 minutes, capping it with a 27-yard touchdown pass to Jimmy Horn Jr. in the corner of the end zone. It was a kind of throw that demanded respect. A perfectly placed ball over the defender's outstretched arm, dropped into Horn's hands like it had been laser-guided. On the sideline, Watson was clapping, trying to keep the optics clean, but the reality was setting in. The rookie wasn't just holding the line. He was changing the game. By the middle of the fourth quarter, Sanders had cut the deficit to 3 points. And then, with just over 2 minutes left, the Browns got the ball back. This was it, the ultimate test. Could a rookie, with the game on the line, against one of the best defenses in the league, pull off the kind of drive that cements legends? The answer was yes. Sanders stayed calm, hitting short passes to move the chains, managing the clock like a veteran. Then, with 34 seconds left and the ball on the opponent's 32-yard line, he called an audible at the line, something rookies rarely dared do in crunch time. He'd recognized a safety creeping toward the box, which left one-on-one coverage outside. He signaled to Cooper, took the snap, and let it fly. Touchdown! The stadium erupted. Players swarmed him. Fans screamed like they'd just witnessed the Browns win a playoff game. And in a way, they had, because that night, Cleveland didn't just beat a rival, they found their future. The fallout, the Monday morning after that game was chaos in the sports world. Every talking head in the country had an opinion. Half of them said the Browns had no choice but to start Sanders going forward. The other half said you couldn't bench Watson after the investment they'd made. But behind closed doors, the conversation wasn't about money anymore. It was about momentum. Kevin Stefanski had a decision to make, and it wasn't just about who gave them the best chance to win. It was about locker room chemistry, fan morale, and the risk of losing the team if the wrong call was made. Players don't forget who gives them belief. And right now, that belief was wearing number 14. For the next week, practice was the most intense it had been all season. Watson took the majority of first-team reps, but Sanders got more than usual. Every throw was under a microscope. Every huddle break was dissected. And then, Thursday morning, Stefanski stepped to the podium. We're going with Shedeur this week. The room went silent for a second, then exploded into questions. Reporters shouted over each other, asking if Watson was hurt, if this was temporary, if Sanders was now the starter. Stefanski sidestepped the long-term implications, saying only that they were making the decision that gave us the best chance to win right now. But everyone knew what that meant. The first official start. Game day came, and Cleveland was electric. Sanders jogged out of the tunnel to a roar that could be heard across the city. His first drive was steady, methodical, no big heroics, just efficient football. By the second quarter, he started opening it up, hitting tight windows and keeping the defense on their heels. The defining play of the game came late in the second half. Facing 3rd and 9, Sanders dropped back, stepped up to avoid the rush, and threaded a ball between two defenders to Njoku for a first down. The drive ended with a touchdown, and the Browns never looked back. They won by double digits. And just like that, the rookie wasn't just the talk of Cleveland. He was a headline of the entire NFL. The locker room shift. Inside the team facility, the shift was complete. Veterans weren't just working with Sanders after practice. They were seeking him out. Defensive leaders like Garrett were telling the media how impressed they were with his poise. Offensive linemen talked about how much they trusted his pocket awareness. It's one thing to win games. It's another to win over the people who share the field with you. And Sanders had done both. The league reacts. Across the NFL, the ripple effects were immediate. Analysts started comparing him to other late-round breakout quarterbacks, from Tom Brady to Dak Prescott, noting that Sanders had the intangible factor you can't teach. Other teams with struggling quarterbacks began facing their own uncomfortable questions. If Cleveland could hand the reins to a rookie this early, why couldn't they? Sanders' jersey sales skyrocketed, surpassing veterans who'd been in the league for years. Kids were wearing number 14 at school, in pickup games, even at other team stadiums. He wasn't just a Brown story anymore. He was becoming an NFL story, the business side. And then came the business implications. Remember those performance-based incentives in his rookie deal? He was smashing through them faster than anyone expected. That meant real money for Sanders, but also meant Cleveland had a bargain on their hands, one that might give them the flexibility to build a contender around him without the cap strain of a massive quarterback contract. For an owner like Jimmy Haslam, that's gold. It's the kind of window you don't waste. The long-term picture. By the time Cleveland was pushing for a playoff spot, Sanders wasn't just holding down the job until further notice. He was the guy. Watson's role shifted to mentor, at least in public. Though everyone knew the situation was still delicate. But Sanders handled it with the same poise he showed on the field. No trash talk, no drama. Just a steady march forward. And here's the thing. It wasn't just the wins that made him dangerous. It was how he won. Sanders could beat you deep. He could beat you with quick timing routes. And he could beat you by controlling the clock. He adapted every week, never looking like a rookie trying to force the same plays.